It's musical thought. That's it. It's thinking in music. That's all audiation means. Now, the specifics of it in his research are that his analogy is that audiation is to music what thought is to language. So here's that language learning model coming in again. That if, as I'm speaking to you, I don't have a script, I don't know what I'm going to say next, but I do think about it right before I say it.
Welcome to the 440. I'm your host, Eric Branner, musician, educator, and founder of Fonts, the platform that helps music teachers run thriving studios. My guest today is Katherine Davis, pianist, educator, and one of the most thoughtful voices I know in online music teaching. Anne lives in Mexico, teaches 100% online, and works across early childhood music, classical piano, improvisation, and teacher mentoring. Her work is deeply informed by the research of Edwin E. Gordon and music learning theory, and she brings a rigorous, reflective lens to how students learn music. Anne's path into music wasn't linear, and that's part of what makes this conversation so powerful. We talk about curiosity, research, independence, and what it really means to take learning seriously as a teacher. I'm thrilled to share this conversation with you. Hello, Anne. Welcome here again.
Hey, Eric. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we just for people listening, just in full honesty, we had a technical glitch. We spent an hour talking, and it was amazing last month. And for all of our technological wizardry, we just couldn't get it to work. So we're back here again with a whole new conversation.
There we go. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I think you understand. Yeah.
It's a win-win for everybody involved.
Right.
Yeah. So how are you doing? What's going on this weekend?
It's a busy week. I've got like this interview with you and my next teacher training group meetings that I do on Zoom. I think I have 11 countries representing this time around. It starts this week also. We're doing MLT stuff, Gordon stuff, of course. All of my meetings online for these teachers are always MLT focused in some way. This one's about technique. And I've got 2 new students that I got to onboard this week too, I think. I'm waiting for the green light from them, so I'm excited about that. But it's like a big week. Everything happens in 1 week, and then there'll be like several weeks of nothing, right? That's just what life feels like.
It's a hustle week, and that's wonderful. And if you're listening to this and you're a piano teacher, you probably know Anne's work already because you're everywhere in all the piano teacher groups, and everyone knows you. And I really appreciate over the last couple of years of getting to know you how quickly you would come into these conversations and so patiently and so kindly offer really reflective, introspective advice and ideas about pedagogy. And what I loved about first learning about you is about how there was so much, you had the science-backed approach about how so there's a joyful element, but there was also this kind of like, well, this is actually scientifically how people learn. Yeah. And that's a new thing. That's a new thing in the last, to me, recent years in pedagogy. And I love that. And it's really great, and it's really well received. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. But especially the kind remark. It in an online world, I think especially it takes work to be kind. So I'm glad that I'm working to be kind. I do mean that sincerely. But you and I both know that receiving new things, trying to give new things in the online format, it can be a hostile environment. It can be tough, which, I mean, it can be tough face-to-face too. I know that too very well. But I think online especially can be very difficult to communicate clearly and try to connect with people. It's possible. Is this what I do 100% now? I used to teach in person. I am now 100% online because of COVID. Like the stories for so many other teachers out there. So yeah, I got into online thinking, oh, this isn't going to work. I didn't like forums very much. And, joke's on me. Here I am, 6 years in now. And it's great. You just got to know how to use it.
Yeah, and you're not only you're teaching from paradise online. So I'm sure that has to help a little bit. You're in Mexico and you're helping people all over. That's a great part of your through line.
Yeah, no, I was a little girl in Southern California, and then my family moved all over the place. I don't come from a musical background at all. My parents don't come from musical backgrounds, but I believe there's untapped musical potential in my parents, interestingly, especially my mom. But I begged for lessons and got told no, just over and over again, no. And so I started on like the sweet little, what do you call it, the mountain dulcimer that lays across the lap, sweet
Yeah.
little sound. And I was, a 4 and 5 year old with that little instrument. I made my own songs, I harmonized them myself. I sang songs about spiders and sharks and things that scared me. Usually, I was kind of a bloodthirsty child, I guess. I liked scary songs, what I thought were scary songs. That's what I did as a little one. And then, not until I was 8 years old and living in the big woods of Wisconsin, I had like a Laura Ingalls upbringing. I was homeschooled K through 12. And that was when I finally received a piano and my first piano teacher. And it was seismic. And from my perspective anyway. And I think my parents too, like they weren't expecting, I knew I wanted to do it. I had not seen other children play piano. I didn't have adults in my life who modeled piano playing, but I don't know how I got this idea. I wanted it. I knew I was going to be good at it, and I was. And so, long story short, I've got grad degrees in piano performance. I went to University of Missouri Columbia and then out into Boston at Boston Conservatory and eventually ended up in central Mexico, of all places. And right before lockdown, like I left the country in 2019 and basically had like a year off. I was like, I don't know what direction life is going, at this point, but I'm not teaching, I'm not performing right now,
Oh.
just reassessing things. And the lockdown happens, and I'm sure like what happened to you and for so many is that you get families calling you. It's like, hey, everyone's online. Can you be online? We miss you. And we want you. We want you. It was not for me, it's never been online is convenient. I get to reach people who don't have teacher options, who don't have the options at all. Not even like teacher preference, but they could be living somewhere remote, like I was in Wisconsin as a child. If I could have been my teacher to my little self, like, from Mexico to
Yes.
Wisconsin, I would have changed my life. I really
Yeah,
would
you
have.
would have.
It's exciting to think about. But yeah, because I do a researched approach and a specific research approach. People know that about me. And so I get this wonderful variety of my child has dyslexia, or someone is neurodivergent, or there are obstinate behavior issues with their other teachers and they can't find someone to click with personality. And so it's not so much me who's like magically making that happen. It's the fact that I'm using neuro research to help me understand each individual. So it's like a puzzle. It's incredibly satisfying work because I get to meet such a variety of people and we get to make beautiful progress, beautiful music and expression with very little children and older children, adults, all people, all types, all ages, no matter what their background is, no matter what their goals are, because I can solve the puzzle each time of what do they need, what are they thinking, and I know the tactics to learn how they're thinking and how to help them think more fluently in music.
And it is almost like you have this passion for music that we have as a teacher, and you have this ability and this skill set that comes from your work of studying not just music, but MLT, but also the background of living in a rural place. And you just said, oh, if I would have had me, and I think that's kind of, that offers a profound bit of intuition or insight, excuse me, because you start to see we all have this real unique background that brings us to what we're doing now and our skill sets and our curiosity and how deep we go into learning something. But it's great that folds into your online persona, is that I can reach anybody anywhere. And there's people who don't have access to this, but they do. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really great perspective, especially for people listening, is that you follow the thing that you do and it just kind of works out. You end up in Mexico and you have a bunch of students and the pandemic will happen. So it'll force people online. It's like things just kind of,
It was all a masterminded plan,
no,
No, no.
you can't plan the really cool stuff that
No.
happens. And it's really, it's really great that you came to that. And I'm just going to just dive right in and just ask, because I know so many people, when they
Okay.
first talk to you, they're just like, what is up? Why am I hearing so much about MLT?
Okay.
What's up with this Edwin E. Gordon guy? What's the story? How is this? Because this is the backbone of the support of your pedagogy. Is that correct? Would you say
Hmm.
that's true?
Yeah, that is the research. Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm.
It's the starting point. I found Gordon's work. It's this big book. I actually brought it out just for show and tell.
Hmm.
That red thing, Learning Sequences in Music. This is like his, I don't know what you want to call it, compendium, his handbook, even though it's just so big and kind of heavy. But I think he does a great job of summing up his research in that book. So I do recommend that book to anybody new wanting to read it. It's slow going at first. Probably what excited me the most when I found this in 2012. And this is the 2012 edition. I think that's how it came across my attention that way. It was getting advertised a bit like, oh, new updated edition. I was like, what is this? And looked into it like, oh, this is brilliant. Where has this been all my life? But in the back of the book, he's got a little bibliography where he cites other people's work. And it goes back, Eric. This stuff goes back. It's like you think, oh, groundbreaking new research. But as is so often the case in the field of science, like nothing's truly new, yes?
Right.
It goes back to older ideas. This goes back to Plato. Plato asked, how does a person learn? And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he asked, how does a person learn something new when encountering a new thing, an unfamiliar thing? How does a person do that? He asked that question. Like, how is the brain going to grapple with something it's never encountered before and make sense of it? That's the foundation in Western science traditions of learning theories right there. There are so many learning theories out there. I've never counted them. I mean, I'm scared to put a number. Like, there's probably more than 20. There's probably more than 30 learning theories out there. And Gordon's is a music learning theory. So he's obsessed with how does the brain process new things as well as old things? And does it compare the two or does it not? And all these really basic questions that you would think music educators should know. Yes, I think everyone should know these things.
It sure seems. And when was he doing this work? Was he a
In the
musician
60s.
first?
He was a musician first. He went to Eastman. He was a bass player, upright bass, classical bass player, and got to tour with the Gene Krupa band, which is fantastic. And one of the things he so admired about Gene was that when Gene wasn't looking at him, he would yell at him, Ed, I can hear that you're not moving back there because this rhythm is not right. You're a little too boxed in, a little too square. But if you will move, then it's going to affect the rhythm because I can hear it. Then you're playing, that you're not jiving back there with the rest of the band.
Wow.
And that set him on that path of, okay, well, how much is movement really necessary for understanding music? And we've got answers and a lot of research that, yeah, it's entirely necessary. You cannot teach rhythm separate from movement. It happens in our motor cortex. You can even ask people who study brains, if you present them with a professional musician brain and don't tell them that they're looking at the brain of a musician, they will say, oh, that's a musician. There are obvious visual markers on the brain, and one of them is the size of the motor cortex in musicians. It's big. It's much larger than people who don't study music. When we hear rhythm, we don't just hear it, we process it physically in a feeling of movement. So yeah, Gordon went into these questions of, okay, so who studied movement? Well, maybe that would be Dalcroze. But then he dug deeper and was realizing, oh no, that would be Rudolf Laban. And so all the Laban studied movements, if you don't know who that is, as a Hungarian dancer and movement theorist and choreographer. And Laban is like mapped out every possible movement that the human body can do. And Gordon studied that and had brain scans to go with movement activities, and he made aptitude tests. His are the gold standard music aptitude tests used worldwide, and they're even used in many, many schools in the USA. It's just a lot of people don't know that they get used. Often private schools make use of them, but you'll see them in public school usage too, and they'll group children according to, oh, this one's got a high rhythmic aptitude, I'm going to put him on drums for the ensemble, and this one's got a high tonal aptitude. I'm going to put her over here with the clarinets, things
Yeah, I
like
was going to ask you that. So the brain processes rhythm using the motor neural
that.
cortex, is what you were
Yeah,
saying. And
yeah.
what about melody?
That
How is
one,
that? Is that different? Yeah.
it's more complicated. It is more complicated. Rhythm
Interesting.
is a visceral, more concrete
Yeah.
experience. Pitch is a more abstract thing. I mean, you think about it, like we play higher pitches, we say higher, but it's a faster frequency, right? That's moving, but a lower pitch is a slower frequency. And so we use, in English anyway, we use the terms high and low. And most languages do that also. So it's a more abstract thing. And there is, I should have brought it with me a year ago, I think now. I think it's just a year old. There's a groundbreaking study that just came out that we have finally localized in the brain a precise part that processes musical pitch. And we had not found that before now, which is
Oh,
just
so it's still going
more.
on.
Oh, it's still going on. It's still
Yeah.
expansive. But that study and studies like that confirm what Gordon was doing in the 60s. But yeah, this things like
Interesting.
aptitude go back to the 20s, I believe, might even be earlier than that with Seashore. And then things like learning theories, Gestalt theory, if you've heard of that one, is what, 1900s Germany, I think. So things like the brain sees patterns and we love to categorize things. And when we see something unfamiliar, we compare it to the familiar. And so depending on what your background is, if you have more familiar stuff that's loosely connected to an unfamiliar thing, you're going to learn that faster than the next person who has a very different vocabulary of what they consider familiar in their life, in their brain. So things like this can help me connect with each child. If a child, for example, shows up with very musical parents, a musical background, typically that child can hear the difference between major and minor tonality when they start with me. But it shouldn't be surprising to us, and yet it is. That when we get these students who don't come from musical backgrounds and they're as old as 8 or 9, and you can like play a major song for them or a major chord and then switch it to something else, augmented, minor, and they'll look at you like it's the same, there's no difference. And that can freak us out, like, what do you mean you don't hear they don't. This is all completely unfamiliar. You've got to give them an immersion in familiarity first before you can introduce one at a time unfamiliar concepts.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about tone?
Tone also, yeah. So
Like, what about creating a beautiful sound and having an
yes,
opinion about? Because I feel like that's so important.
and being able to sing in tune. Like what is in
Yeah.
tune also? Like the pianos, infamously are never in tune, right?
Yeah.
We do
Can't have it.
quite slight of, but no, really, like the tuning system for pianos is it's developed over time. Also, thirds on a piano are not as pure as, say, what a choir can do with the way they sing, and they can tune in that way too. Gordon identified, I believe, 20 areas of aptitude, but he worked on developing his tests to only focus on two, which is rhythm and tonal, since those are the two like biggest things we're kind of concerned about as musicians. But he hypothesized, and I think more so than that, things like register, timbre, tone, harmony, a harmonic aptitude. Dr. Eric Rasmussen, his work on harmonic learning sequences, which is a little bit of a riff and a title on Gordon's learning sequences in music. He is an MLT teacher and researcher. He's done wonderful work on harmony, and because of his stuff, I have children. Is my own child. I'll just brag about him. He's 2.5 now. He can sign to me with his fingers. He'll do this for yes, like a nodding head, and he'll shake his finger and wag it for no. And we use Eric Rasmussen's terms, yes and no, for tonics and dominants. He's 2.5. He's been doing that since he was about 14 months old. So he can identify
Whoa.
in major and minor tonics and dominants. He can also sing back to me the central tone, the tonic root, the resting tone is the term many educators know. That's what I like to call it too. Of any tonality, Eric. He can do all 7 tonalities of Western fine art music. If I sing in Locrian, and we do sing in Locrian for our brain our brain audiation development, my 2.5-year-old will sing back to me the correct pitch that is the tonic root of that tonality.
Of Locrian.
Of Locrian, yep.
Wow.
And Aeolian and Dorian.
Wow. Which is the seventh,
Mixolydian.
for people listening, that's the seventh
Yeah.
mode. That's pretty intense.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. Oh, yeah, it's intense. It's weird. Yeah.
So you teach that.
Yeah.
You teach the modes as well. And you have,
Yes.
or you have your child hear the
Yes.
modes as well as part of your, so
And
yeah.
we need that because MLT, music learning theory, it shows that we know what something is by what it is not. And this goes back to like Gestalt theory, learning theories. This is old stuff that I can't just inundate a beginner in major tonality and duple meter in a method book for like 3 years and then expect them to understand what major tonality and duple meter is. It's just not how the brain works. That's working against the brain. The brain compares things and looks for patterns. It loves contrasts and patterns. It craves novelty. So when I sing a major song to a bunch of babies and toddlers, and when we play major music in my piano lessons with 6 and 7-year-olds and up, we also change it immediately to triple meter and to harmonic minor and to Dorian and to Mixolydian. So when you have an understanding of what Mixolydian sounds like, it actually reinforces your prior understanding of what major tonality sounds like and how it behaves and functions. So the more variety, the better, the more musical you are.
So are you comfortable? And it's just so interesting. I've been learning about this and hearing about it, but never really, I'm so excited that we're diving into it here. And when so as a teacher, you're comfortable away from the instrument, taking a melody and taking a major key melody and moving it into Dorian or Phrygian. Like right now, like that's part of the training, because what's going to happen is people are listening, and I know how a lot of piano teachers work. It's interesting because it's a very guitaristic thing. Guitar players spend so much time just playing scales because that's how that pedagogy was commonly done for so long. But to be able to actually do it is probably maybe scary for a piano teacher that learned traditionally and that might be teaching in a traditional format, because that's not how method books work, right?
No,
in general.
How do method books work? They work through the eyes and not the ears. Yeah, that we've had this terrible change in our music learning history. Probably went down about the 50s, but maybe a little sooner than that. That we moved from believing that music was an oral art form to a visual one. It's a strange thing to think about. And when we do that, then we over-theorize too, right? Like if I say, the seventh mode, it's tempting to think in very theoretical terms of like, oh, it's got a lowered fifth and a lowered third. And like, that's just not how musicians think in the moment when they're making music. It isn't. And that's a big part of Gordon's work. I should summarize very briefly that because it's a music learning theory, one of the things that Gordon came across, and it's probably the crux of his whole research, is that a music learning theory is highly similar to a language learning theory. That's what he discovered. That is his breakthrough work, that like Suzuki talking about the mother tongue, this is, again, not a new concept, but Gordon wanted to prove it. It's like, well, what's the science for it? And I think that he has proven it. There are still people out there who want to argue that, well, music isn't a language, so it shouldn't be compared. I'm like, well, but that
why would that
is half true, right? Because music isn't a language, correct? But it is like a language. That's what's important about it. It functions syntactically. It has a grammar of its own and a vocabulary of its own. But thankfully, it isn't actually a language, because if it were, I would be bored and I wouldn't be doing this for my life. I wouldn't. If I could talk about music and find that to cover 100% of what music means, then why on earth would I be into music? Like, why? Music is beyond what words can do. Music does things differently than what words can do. And we know this scientifically too, right? Like stroke victims, even different autisms have been treated with music therapy. And that if we can get them to sing after we immerse them in music, it can actually restore speech. in the
Yeah.
mind and in the muscles and coordination of the person who's had, say, a stroke.
Yeah.
It's amazing that it's not speech therapy that reaches people like that. It's music therapy because it actually bypasses our more literal thinking, our language center, I guess I could say, something like that. Music is a deeper thing. Music is something, it's an aspect of being human that language can't fulfill on its own. But is it like a language? Yes, absolutely. It does behave similarly to a language. And so the learning of it that Gordon puts forward then is the same sequence of learning that, say, a baby goes through. They're born into a culture and a language. And I mean, just like you have done with your kids, and I hope everyone on the planet has done with their kids, they didn't wait for their kid to speak before they were spoken to. Yes,
Right.
that would not be as smart. It doesn't work. We know that the baby isn't going to talk back. We know that the baby can't understand everything I'm saying. And yet, what do we say to babies? Oh, you're so cute. Mama loves you so much. Oh, I think you're hungry. Do you feel hungry? Like we have these sentences and structured and tonal inflection and creativity, and we sing songs and lullabies and movement and so on. So they're immersed in a vocabulary of their mother tongue. Same thing with music. Whatever music you're doing, you can apply MLT to Indian classical music. You can teach pop, rock, jazz, Chinese, whatever your culture is.
Idiom doesn't matter.
Right. But the good news is that everybody has a brain, you know? So whatever the medium is, the way the brain learns it is going to be the way the MLT has laid out. So it's immersion and then babble, baby babble. And I encourage this at the instrument as well. You want random playing, random improv, experimentation, things that can make so many piano teachers, you know, cringe inside.
Yep.
Don't hit my piano. No, we need them to hit the piano. We do. We really need them. Just like with finger painting and making messes, they've got to make messes with music also. So they learn, again, you'll hear MLT teachers say this probably too much, that we learn what something is by what it is not. And you can't streamline like these methods do out there of this is middle C, now you're gonna learn D like a robot. It's like, why is everything like AI even before it became AI? I just don't understand. Everything's become so mechanized and not human anymore that we want them to read that, count it for 4 beats instead of feeling it as we do with rhythm. And having it in a context of, well, what is middle C doing? Is it the resting tone? Is it the dominant in F major? Is it going to be C Dorian? Like, what's happening? There's so many, but we think in context, and we need these differences and variety, just like we need in our language learning. Growing up.
And
Yeah.
if you were, so I want to jump around here a little bit. So let's say I brought a 7-year-old child into your studio, and what does the process for the student? I mean, you were explaining some ideas of how it works, but do you use a method book at that age?
I do.
So
I do.
Okay.
At first, I would say as gently as possible. At 7 is too late. We know, according to Gordon's research, but also, of course, it's peer-reviewed research that I'm talking about. This isn't like some isolated man out on an island somewhere. Like, his research is connected to all this other stuff historically, and it's ongoing today. That music aptitude, this is, you could call it music potential, the development of how much difficulty it takes for the brain to learn musical concepts. That window of development closes by 9 years old. So if you have a complete beginner starting at 7, then I have 24 months to get them as immersed in all the tonalities, all the meters, and experimenting, basically like, you know, finger painting and so on, all these seemingly random experiences that someone at 2 would be doing.
Okay.
So they could be, you know, naturally high aptitude child, and that's fine. But what's still heartbreaking to me and to many MLT teachers is that a high aptitude child could still have developed even higher aptitude if they had started in infancy, immersed in music, going to music and toddler classes, singing and moving and improvising with their voice and their body, singing and improvising and moving on an instrument of their choice at 5 or 6 years old, and continuing to develop their harmonic sensitivity, I guess you could call it, until about 9. When you hit 9.5 years old, that's the end, Eric. That's it. After that, it's achievement. You are stuck with the abilities that your brain can do. It's not going to grow anymore. You're not going to make brand new musical synapses in your brain after the age of 9. This is old. This is like for you and for me. This is bad news.
I was going to say, so what would that mean? What would that mean then? If you were, because I did come from a musical family, but like you, I didn't start playing guitar. I had to play piano, didn't want to quit. And so I started playing guitar really when I was 13. And like yourself, if you had yourself and you came in at 12, would you be like, oh, here's this high functioning, awesome kid? Where do you start then? So where do you begin the 12-year-old?
So you start with getting to know, okay, what are they audiating? And I guess we should probably define.
And that, I was going to wait to see who said it first. And because that's the key word. Hang out. It's like, here it comes. Yeah. Tell us about audiation.
So audiation, it's a term that was coined by Gordon in the 60s. I think kind of a fun, can you tell, I love to talk and I could go down too many rabbit trails. I actually don't know if I've completely answered any of your questions yet, so feel free to repeat anything. Great. But anyway, audiation, I believe it was actually used in medicine by someone, I gotta try to find this source again, about anything and everything related to the ear, the auditory cortex, like not just the mechanism, but also the neurons involved, that was audiation. So I found that kind of interesting, like, oh, somebody else came up with that weird term that like isn't in the dictionary, but not just Gordon. But Gordon has a very specific term in his research, a specific definition, I mean to say, whenever he says audiate or audiation or audiated, like you can go through all the tenses with this. And that is simply that it's musical thought. That's it. It's thinking in music. That's all audiation means. Now, the specifics of it in his research are that his analogy is that audiation is to music what thought is to language. So here's that language learning model coming in again, that if as I'm speaking to you, I don't have a script, I don't know what I'm going to say next, but I do think about it right before I say it. Now, does that mean I'm like hearing the words in my mind before I say it? Well, obviously not. Otherwise, we couldn't have a conversation at this speed. I would be needing to plan out each sentence in my brain. Right, that's just not. So that gives you already an experience, that everyone knows how insanely fast thought is. Thought is instantaneous. It's so quick. And then comprehension is also that after I have said this, you have audiated the meaning to what I've said. And so audiation, just like thought, it happens right before something and right after something. Yes? You can have, if I give some kind of dramatic pause, then you can anticipate what I was probably going to say, but that's based on your vocabulary and experiences as an English speaker. Yes? So there are all these things coming into style and form and performance and what it means to have a conversation and language. Same thing in music. So if you audiate, I'm trying to remember, what was our example? Last time we talked, it was Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah, sure. That's what I brought up. Now, you already know what that is, and you haven't heard it in your mind when I say that. You've already audiated what that is. That's a familiar folk tune. It's done. I could say Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I could say London Bridge. I could say something more obscure like, I can't even think, Looby Loo or something, more obscure folk songs that some people don't know. And at that point, it's like your audiation stops. Like, well, I don't have experience with that, so I can't actually think about that one. But it is not inner hearing. This is the big deal about audiation research. If I had to inner hear in order to audiate, like my example I just did earlier with speaking, I wouldn't have time. Yes, it's just not fast enough. It's not, that isn't, and I'm not meaning to say that inner hearing is bad or wrong. That's not what I mean. And it's not what Gordon means. It's simply that people who inner hear are not necessarily audiating, but people who audiate may or may not be inner hearing. And it's not necessary for them to audiate. They don't have to enter here in order to audiate. But someone who makes an emphasis, and look, I'll just come out and say it, things like the Kodai approach. I was deeply into Kodai before 2012. And one of the things that drove me bonkers with Kodai was things like the hand symbols of solfege and the way things translated in far too much of a visual way to this is one beat, that's two beats, this is C on the line, and this is C in the space. And I was like, this is just not how I process things as a musician. I'm pretty sure it's not how musicians that I know and respect process things either, because that's too slow. This can't be possible. So when I read his book, and Gordon's book in 2012, I was like, yes, audiation is musical thought. It's so fast. And you're either thinking in music or you're thinking about music. That there are only two ways to do this. And thinking about music is not musical thought. Inner hearing is thinking about music. I can think about Mary Had a Little Lamb and hear it in my mind.
That's not audiation.
But it's not audiation. Or I should say, it's very low audiation.
Is audiation being present in the moment of unfolding that music as you play it?
Yes, absolutely. There are several types and stages of audiation. We can dig into that probably in a different conversation.
Sure.
But there are different types of audiation and how this works and different stages to it of sophistication. And so for example, a folk musician, they could be, maybe they take something like bluegrass or something that has really fantastic virtuosity about it. And we're just in awe, how's the banjo, how's he even picking that fast? I just don't know how he's thinking like that. I think that guy is audiating. He may not be able to read any music at all, and he may not be able to tell you if something is major or minor. But he probably thinks in major and minor, and maybe even has created his own terms for major and minor. But he is not at the same literacy level of musicianship that he can then talk about it theoretically with someone else. And I found that wonderful to realize that music theory isn't audiation. Music theory isn't musicianship. That's something that happens much, much later. I can talk about augmented and Dorian and German augmented sixth all day if you want to, but it's not music. That's just analysis. And
a way to describe it.
Yes, a way to talk about it. But it's cool. I love theory, but it isn't music. And theory is put front and foremost in all of these method books of count out 4 beats and identify that C major chord, But if you play it, can they hear it? Can they tell you, is that the same as this other chord or is it different? And that's the beginning of audiation right there, of same versus different. I'm doing these little, with my young kids, it's the same hands or is it different hands? So I'll play different things on the piano, or I'll sing different patterns and ask them, did what I say something like bum, and then my next pattern, bum, 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 was that the same or different? And it can be shocking how many people look at you, I think those are different. And it can take a while to develop just that part of the audiation muscle. And once you establish that there are differences, then you take it a further step of, okay, now we're going to hold on to the resting tone. And you do things like sing Mary Had a Little Lamb and freeze in the middle of the song and stare at the kid where is it? Where's do? Where was the resting tone? And see if they'll come back and be able to hold on to that center pitch the whole time. So that's some of the activities I'm explaining of MLT. But I should be careful and again say that to understand MLT is to know what it is not. We know what something is by what it is not. And that is that it is not a method. It's not a method at all. There is a method, multiple methods. Here's the piano one, music moves for piano. And this is the application of the research into piano teaching. And there's the Jump Right In series for band instruments. And they've got the new guitar method.
Yes, they do.
Call it audiate. It's with an exclamation point. Yeah.
Audiate, exclamation point.
Yeah.
I was going to title today's episode, Anne talks me into adopting the audiate method for my guitar studio.
Let's do it.
You're doing great.
One of the things you'll find when you open that book is these activities of resting tone games and pattern activities and so on. And you'll be tempted, like I was, I think. Maybe I shouldn't assume. I think most everyone is tempted to look at that and say, oh, this is Gordon. This is what Gordon must be. And it's not. That's the methodical application of his
research.
all his research is asking and examining and answering is, what does the brain do when it processes music? How does it learn music? Plato's question, how does it learn new concepts in music? What does the brain do when processing that? And look, Gordon, like, he got to meet with Suzuki and show him this stuff. Suzuki hated it. He absolutely did not like
Oh,
this
he wasn't a
stuff.
fan.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay. I can imagine
Yeah,
that.
because like I can't remember what it's called. Oh, the talent education. Talent, what is it called? It was Suzuki's belief that everyone can be trained to the same amount of talent, no matter who
Oh.
they are and where they're born.
Mhm.
And of course, Gordon's aptitude tests are showing that each brain is different. Like some
Yeah.
people are born with crazy high rhythm and crazy low tonal. Some are like happily in the average, it's like 2 points apart, in separation, and all these variations in between, right? And then you get somebody who's like in the 90th something percentile for rhythm and pitch. You're like, oh gosh, we've got a savant. Like that's not a common result in aptitude testing that happens.
And
So
maybe what
yeah,
Suzuki really was meaning is that the average person can do a lot through this method, which
yes.
I
I
through
think
the
that's what he meant. Yes. And then so
got it.
it's heartbreaking to me because I think they met only the one time. And I think that there was a lot of communication difficulty of
I
trying to
was going to say
show
that too.
what this is and how it works. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so let me jump in another direction really quick. Everyone who I've met who was a big fan of MLT, and I have quite a few friends now, including yourself, that are really inspired by it, really interested in it. I don't think any of them learned it as children before the age of
No.
9.
Nope. Nope.
So my question is, because when you said that, I was like, oh, okay, forget that. I'm out. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
If I can't personally benefit and become a better guitar player from this, why
You
would I?
can.
Yeah,
No,
but
you
so
can.
my
You
question
can
is,
still.
yeah. So if I'm discovering this thing, and let's say I'm sitting down today and I'm playing a piece by Targa it's a new piece
Okay.
of music or an old piece of music, maybe that I'm pulling out to practice. Would this, as I'm learning these skills, would this change my practice in the practice room for how I say would play classical guitar, or maybe how I would play
Yes.
bluegrass, which I also play? Like how could this inform an adult learner, and in my case, a pretty high level player? How would that impact my practice session today?
Yes.
I'm going to learn Capriccio Arabe by Targa. So,
Hmm. No, so my personal story is I flunked out of my first ever university class in theory. And I decided, when that happened to me, well, this will never ever happen again. And it put me onto the whole field of research of learning theories. I wanted to know, like, how can I learn this? Because obviously what I did, and mostly it was what I didn't do. I was a freshman, I
of
just
course.
didn't want to mostly. But how could I do things differently next time around? What can I do? And I discovered things like Noah Kajiyama and his
Yep.
Bulletproof Musician practice. Cool guy, by the way. You should just go ask him to come on your podcast next. Yeah, but that'd be a great conversation,
Will
right?
do.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, that was back in '06, '07. And I wanted to get better with my brain. And by discovering MLT later in 2012, yes, it will change you because at this point you can improve your audiation, you can improve your achievement in musical thinking, but you cannot raise the ceiling of your potential. That's what this means after the age of 9. Yeah.
Got
So
it. There you go.
yeah, so it's the difference between potential and achievement, and that's a huge field of research just in and of its own. Also, that things like there's a terrible study done where they put a blindfold over one eye of a kitten when it was born, and I mean, guess what happened? Like 6 months later, when they took the blindfold off, the kitten was blind in that eye because since there was no use for those cells to develop according to
It
the
didn't.
brain's perspective, it didn't use it or lose it, right? So was the kitten born with no potential to see out of both eyes? Well, no, it was born with the potential to see, but the potential was removed and
Uh-huh.
developing. And so when I encounter a 7 or 8 year old who comes from no music background, I understand that they've been wearing a blindfold for 8 years. And all of a sudden it's taken off for this last brief part of the window where it can develop. It can still develop before they hit 9.5 years old. And I got to run to try to get as much musical immersion into that kid as I possibly can.
Got it.
So I hope that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah. That's a great way to explain it. Yeah. So how would I apply this to my practice? And, and I've got all these, you have these kind of, what are these lenses of like, I'm looking at a passage this way, and I know what the scale is. I know how many sharps there are, and it's starting on the third, so I start to hear these things, like not audiating, but when I look at a piece of music, I start hearing what I think it should sound like.
And you are probably audiating already. You just, we don't have the term for it.
Right. Okay.
Yet. It's really like self-analyze quite yet. I'm trying to think like what's a really quick, rewarding example we can do. Probably with rhythm is the easiest way in to feel this, is if you were presented something like something famous. If I were to play For Elise for you.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay, sure. That is perfect. I've never heard it before.
Know,
yeah.
Oh, it's just brand new.
Yeah, it's brand new.
No, if you know how young pianists play that piece, who are not audiating at a high level. If they start playing this thing, like if they're going, I don't even know if I've got original sound on. They're like, I don't. So there's no phrasing happening. Yeah, they're like beat, beat, beat. No, incident. That there's this dot, that dot. And because they've been taught to read before they can audiate, before they can think in music. And so they're executing dot and they're not hearing phrases and structure and so on. So for Elise, it starts on an upbeat, but you wouldn't know it if it were played that way that I just did. But if you were moving to a recording of it, say, like all these, and that's something that, I admired with Kodai and Suzuki and Orff and all these sound before symbol approaches. They love their recording libraries and CDs and professional level performing and modeling. And we want to be doing that for kids. So if they're hearing something like, then if you're moving to it side to side wherever you find the largest beat, then you can feel it doesn't start on a ba, it starts on a da 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 da.
Got it. And so this is where the movement becomes part of the practice at any age.
Here's where movement happens. Yes. And so any age that you're moving, and Gordon calls that the macro beat, the largest beat that you feel. And so however that's written, 3/8, 3/4, I don't care how it's written. I'm going to be feeling wherever that biggest beat is, D-ta-do, ta-dee-ta-do.
So it's more important to feel it first as opposed to just looking at the score. Got you.
Yep. And then you will move, when your audiation develops, then you will see a score and you don't have to physically move because you'll be moving on the inside. That you will be audiating very quickly, instantaneously, that, oh, I know how that feels, just by glancing at it. These are like the best sight readers on the planet, right? Where like you could put a score in front of them, they're like, oh, I know what to do, because that's a notational audiation that they're doing, that they can see it and they know how it transcribes into the body and into sound. So that's an easy way to feel that no matter how it's written, if the largest beat is written as the half note or something in there, and yet the time signature says 4/4, then no, it's not 4 beats. It's not 4 impulses per measure that you're feeling. I'm feeling each half bar as It starts to organize the hierarchy of where is the musical feel, where is the
Interesting
happening. And so that is a great example, I think,
of
sound instead of visuals happening. And time signatures are such an archaic holdover from dance music and stuff. They're mostly meaningless. I don't know any pro musician who looks at, a Bach Gigue and thinks, oh, let me check, is it in 6/8? We don't. We know the idiom, we know the style, we know what to expect, and it's like, I'm going to play this fast because it's a jig. Here we go.
Yeah, I have so many questions. I want to make sure that I get 3 more out. So, MLT. So I'm studying with you. I'm learning MLT. I'm building all this. How does, because I know in guitar, when you, especially in classical guitar, so much of the development is just like technique because so many people want to play like Spanish music or, really
Mm.
flashy stuff. How do you, as an MLT teacher, bring, because I know that, if, for instance, a lot of the stuff we do to develop speed is to play very slowly,
Oh,
and to break things into section, or to take straight eights and to swing them to
ugh,
allow some of the notes to. There's all
I
these
hate
like,
that one. I really hate that one.
oh, it's good for
Oh,
bluegrass.
goodness. Yeah.
It helps. Well, that's an idea of physical tension and relaxation. But these are
Mhm.
which. How does MLT? You hate it. How does MLT like approach these conventional ways of developing
Right.
technique in a player?
Wonderfully, audiation solves about 98% of what everybody perceives to be a technical problem, which
Whoa.
is bizarre for us to think about.
Huh.
But if you audiate, meaning if you think in music, just like you think in language, you are thinking in large groups of meaning, large groups of meaning. You're not just thinking, oh, this is a tonic that goes to the subdominant, that goes to the supertonic, and then, ooh, there's something spicy like a secondary dominant. And then we finally get a dominant and we return to the tonic. That is still too fragmented, even though I wish like that was more common, even just that level in method books out there, especially for piano. I'm talking that these little guys can audiate half cadences and whole phrases from a very, very young age when they are thinking musical ideas. And so when they are first given their recorded performance to listen to, or I model something, it's a sound before symbol approach. These children can play entire phrases of music without reading a single note. And they'll add their own harmony to it, like in the left hand of the
Mhm.
piano. And they'll look at me like wickedly and be like, I'm going to drop all the F sharps, Miss Ann, because I want it to be Mixolydian today. I'm like, okay, fine, go ahead. So they are so musical that they think in big chunks, big chunks. So same thing also when there is technical thing, because it's not always going to be solved by audiation, but almost always it will solve that. For piano, for example, I won't speak to guitar. My own experiences are my little mountain dulcimer, later a hammered dulcimer, and what else did I have? I think that I did Suzuki violin for a few years
Mhm.
also. But that's it. Piano is my jam. When we play fast on the piano, you can't practice slowly, click up the metronome 2 notches, and then practice it at that next tiny, tiny level, and then get it to the speed you want. If you do that, and Noah Kajiyama talks about this, I think it's for
Mhm.
hockey players, about the
Yes.
speed of smacking the puck into
Mhm.
the net versus accuracy. Slow practice is just accurate practice. It involves like abductors in the fingers. We
Yep.
don't move the same way and at a slow speed than we do at a fast speed. And so solving technical issues can look like, for example, you have to have knowledge of physiognomy and how the body works. You need to have a little bit of anatomy knowledge to get this right. When there is a true technical problem, which is rare, at least in my experience, and in many other MLT teachers' experiences too, that if we want to get something up to speed, first of all, we never would have practiced it slowly to begin with. That just never would have happened because they audiate at such a fast level. They know where the notes are on their instrument. They already know how their fingers are going to move to get there away from the instrument before they've even tried it. And so they learn their repertoire at a ludicrous speed, Eric. Like when it gets to the point after about 3 years of study, if they start with me at 4, let's say, by the time they're 7 years old, I can give them like early classical level playing, like their first Clementi sonatina, some Reinagel, maybe even one of the very
Hmm.
easy Anna Magdalena Bach notebook things like the D minor, that one bounces
Yeah.
back and forth. And they can learn it without me showing them anything about it. Like I just give them the piece and they come back the next week playing it. I don't have to suffer that common issue of like, you missed the F sharp, you missed the F sharp. Oh, careful,
Huh.
count 2 beats right here. Because we don't think on such micro levels. We think in big chunks. So they learn physically very quickly. If there's some technical issue trying to get up to speed, you can do things like break it into a chunk. I think you mentioned that,
Yeah.
of a small gesture. And then you want to examine the gesture needed to get between those 2 chunks. What is it that's holding up? So you got to be able to analyze with muscles, where does this muscle movement stop? Where does the next muscle movement begin? And then what is the musical move, the music move, which is why I love the title of
The
this method.
musical move. Yep.
What's the
Okay.
musical move between those two mostly static, but they're not entirely static positions, for lack of a better word, between those two things? What's going to happen? What do I need to happen before that? So we can play that and stop, practice the movement in between incredibly quickly, as fast as we can, and then start the next movement. And so that's practicing fast slowly, is what I like to call it.
Yes. With
So it's
breaking it
still
into
using,
chunks.
but you're still using that muscle twitch that athletes talk about, where you're activating the speed that you need and you're practicing the speed that you need. But yeah, doing the whole incremental thing, changing the rhythm, like to swung rhythms and stuff like that, that works at such a micro level that often the next day your progress is gone and you're starting over again. And then the next
Right.
day your progress is diminished, perhaps not as greatly, but you're still having to start over again. And so things like that waste time. We want to be the most efficient with our practicing. So I don't assign dotted rhythms and scales and stuff like that, because we don't need to. We really don't need to. If the apparatus, the human mechanism, has been trained to respond to the other part of our humanness, which is our brain, in audiation. And so I get to develop both things at once. And Gordon does a great job, by the way, at staying out of the human mechanical element. He very carefully was like, I'm going to deal only with the brain. The rest of you, all y'all out there, whether you're a pianist, a guitarist, an organist, figure it out. Write the methods to apply this research theory, but I'm not going to get in the way and tell you, oh, you need to play like this as a pianist or like that as a clarinetist or whatever is going on. So people can be frustrated sometimes. They're like, well, what does it mean for me as a piano player? And like, you got to find your MLT piano friends who have
You got
been
to
following
find your
this stuff.
thing and how to
Yep.
apply
Find your
that to
people.
what you do.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I'm sure that also as a teacher, that gives you a huge amount of creativity with how you approach who you work with, because there's so many ways of, it's not doctrine, but it's more, you can be really free and try to,
Absolutely. And using this new tool, this is a modern day tool of science research. It shouldn't surprise us, but it still surprises me that when I apply this contemporary knowledge, it doesn't result in something that's foreign. It actually results in something that's older than what we do today, where my kids are improvising their own cadenzas and they're writing their own ideas. They're little composers and improvisers, just like Mozart and Bach and Beethoven and Chopin. I mean, all the way up to like Rachmaninoff, and like it seems like he was the last one. It's like ever after that, we splintered off and we specialize in pianists who only perform and pianists who only improvise and
oh yeah.
pianists who don't really play anymore, but they compose for other pianists. And we don't have this whole humanness reality of what it means to be a musician anymore. And there are books out there that say, oh, buy this supplement to teach alongside your method so your kids can improvise. And it's not improvisation.
Right.
It's not. And so audiation unlocks this past for us where we can return to a more traditional way of learning while using a contemporary key to unlock it.
Yes.
It's been lost, and I do see it making ground. I think we are returning to more full musicianship. We're seeing, Van Cliburn winners and so on today in the piano field who also improvise, and that just was not the case for quite some decades.
Are you familiar with the guitarist Augustin Barrios Mangor,
Yeah, I do know who that
who
is.
was a gymnast and a poet? And when you mentioned movement, and,
Yes,
and he would compose his cadenzas in the moment while touring
yes.
Europe, and so amazing. He was a contemporary of Segovia, who you hear about a lot more, but that music is so fiery and so explosive, and so
Yes.
and also when you were talking, I was thinking about people like Miles Davis and like the great, the people.
Amazing.
Yeah, it seemed like they may have clued into that concept
And look, I
Um,
do think, like, still in pop rock today, there's still an improvisatory, more full musician thing happening there. Not as much as there used to be, but there is still something of that culture
mm,
there. Um, but yeah, I just the idea of, can I be? Have I reached my zenith as a teacher? Like, no, that's wonderful that I haven't peaked yet because I am teaching things that I was not taught, and seeing how these children grow up around me, they make me better with my own improvisation and my own compositions and things too, because I'm living in their world with them the whole time, and no, it makes the work so satisfying that I get to care about and learn about each individual person, who they are and where they come from.
mhm.
And then it takes them a while to realize that, no, I wrote this piece for you because of
Right.
your brain, and I want you to give a title to it. And then I'm going to assign it to your friend to also play that piece. And
Oh.
they slowly realize things like, wow, I have an impact and I'm six. Like, I'm a little person, and I have I can be a musical colleague from very early on. And it's really thanks to Gordon and my past teachers for helping me reach the musicianship that I did. It's absolutely a combination that I reached a high point in music making, and I wanted to combine it with a learning theory of how
Yeah.
can I disseminate this so that it's not lost.
Mm,
I don't want this. There's still this mysticism, like there are many, many piano professors out there. I don't care about, oh, am I going to get in trouble saying it out loud? They all know what I'm talking about, that they want this kind of guru image of their studio, of their people, their students becoming like them, and that they're giving them secrets of the trade. And like, there are no secrets, okay? There are none. Like, we know how the brain learns, we know how music works, and we should be putting those two things together. Sports medicine is a recent field, but not that recent. It's been around for quite some time now. And before it entered the scene, we had injured athletes all over the place, and athletes questioned, how can I do this in a way it's not going to hurt me so I don't decimate my career? And yet, musicians, especially pianists today, we're really slow to embrace science and research. We don't want to close this gap of, I learned from this long storied tradition going back to Brahms, who, by the way, was a full human being. He loved poetry. He took his pupils on walks into the Black Forest for picnics to talk about poetry together because he wanted to connect and learn about each of his people as people. Otherwise, how are they going to be good musicians? Claudio Rao was another favorite of mine. His teacher insisted that he go to the opera, that he go to the symphonies, that he go to museums, that he read history, and that he know something of science. Otherwise, how is he going to be a good pianist? And I mean, you can hear it in these
mhm.
storied performers. They are full human beings. They have a full life, rich with experiences. They are not some hot house plant in one conservatory with their one teacher, and they do their undergrad, their grad, and their PhD all in one spot. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. And they want to be a carbon copy of this person who can't actually disseminate his knowledge because he hasn't learned how the brain learns. And so there's a lot of holding on these traditions, holdover traditions that don't make sense, that involve touching your hand or touching the student's back, that don't make anatomical sense, that don't make scientific sense.
Right.
And I
Because
realize that that's offensive to some people. Like, they don't want to change because they come from some wonderful tradition of music making. But the science doesn't destroy that. It actually opens up how to disseminate it more accurately and more efficiently.
And I'm so glad you brought up the third piece because I was just getting ready to, which is being a human, which is,
Yeah.
and that's something that I focus so much on my teaching. And that's something it's more vibe and energy based. And you can play with these things as developing, because face it, there's so many effective musicians who are not good
Yes.
musicians, but there's
Yes.
something,
Sorry.
right, but they're like, yeah, they don't know anything about music, can't read. Somehow their
No.
music just, and it's that humanity piece. And I love that you brought that up. That's part of the process in conjunction. So let me do this because we're about out of time, and I want to make sure that people are listening. I think hopefully they've gotten a really good idea about this and feel really interested about it. But what's the first, you're sitting in your studio, you're about to have your student come today. You just heard this podcast. You're like, oh, great. And just turned everything I know on its head. What's the way to come into this? What's your first step to, say you're a piano teacher and you're listening, you're like, you know what, I really want to, is it just to go online and come to one of your courses, or is it to start hanging out in a group? What's the thing?
For me, it's, come be my friend. Just come talk to me so I can get to know who you are. What are you looking for? What's your studio culture? What are you doing with these children and these adults? What are you trying to do? Because each person is different. Each situation is different. But me aside, if you don't want to talk to me, which just hurts my feelings, I love to talk.
But you're saying you find someone to talk to. Like,
right,
reach out to, like, it's somebody. Literally cool to say, hey, Ann, I heard your episode.
Yes.
I'm interested in this and I don't know anything about it. So don't judge me for how I've been teaching my whole life.
Be a friend. You need to have a friend. You can't be an island out there and think that, you're going to get better. You need to be in a community with people, and you need real people feedback.
Got you.
The Facebook group, Music Moves for Piano Teachers, it's the name of the method with teachers at the end of it. Wonderful people, and a variety of people, by the way. There are folks in that group who use just a little bit of MLT, and then there are full-blown people like me who want to use it in everything that I do. And I tell folks, like, I think it's great to start small like that. Like, we did a little bit of rhythmic movement, like in your piano lesson or whatever instrument that you're going to teach later today. Do some movement. Do some. And I don't care how hokey it is. You can teach a conducting pattern using a pencil as a baton, and then ask them to switch to the left hand and do it differently so that you're getting both sides of the body. Have them get up and sway to what they think is the pulse. And here's the kicker. Don't correct them. Just observe. And then model where the pulse is, but be watching your student like, oh my gosh, like, they don't feel the pulse, and I didn't know this till today. And then you can do things like hold hands, ring around the rosy style, and gently sway with them to the pulse. I prefer, because there's a lot of science to back this up, not to touch. Don't touch. Just model. And then you can comment at some point, maybe a few weeks from now, do you see how you move differently than I do? Mine's different, or yours is different. Can you make it the same? Oh, that was almost the same. Okay, let's do something else. So you're always very gently having the brain teach itself that you're providing the correct model, but you're not telling the student, oh, you're wrong, try again. Okay, let's drill it for the whole lesson. No, these things take time. Myelination takes time. So Make it a game. Introduce some movement today would probably be a huge, huge step. And if you do movement already, then the step is make a variety of it. Don't do the same movements each lesson. The brain learns what something is by what it is not. So switch it up. Float like a butterfly. Ride on a cloud. Swing in an elephant's trunk. Give a butterfly a ride on the back of your hand. You have all these different imagery you can do to experience lightness and heaviness. Push against a car, like your car is stalled. You got to push it off the road onto the shoulder. You're walking into a strong wind, or you've got mud in your shoes, or the mud is pulling your boots off, or something like that. So we can experience this whole variety of human movement, and having it on a spectrum gives you that variety of technique at your instrument too. You don't want all your staccato notes to be the same. You don't want all of your dynamic to be the same, like you've turned on a machine and this is the decibel and that's what we're going to do. You want to have human experiences along a spectrum. So do that with movement too. Things will change in like 3 or 4 weeks. Movement and rhythm is one of those things where when you really embrace it, the results are scary, how fast the progress can be. Different with pitch, but rhythm is a really satisfying way in if you're new to MLT.
Wow. Well, Ann, this has been amazing. You've given so much beautiful information and advice and encouragement. So thank you for being here. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see how my MLT, my journey goes with this.
I want to know about it. And I don't know the guitar method yet. So like go open it up and then tell me like, what does it look like? I want to know. I do.
I'll fill you in.
Right.
I've got this great space to teach in. I've got new students coming in. So I'm ready to get in there. So I'll keep you posted. Thank you, Ann. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to the 440 Podcast. If you found this helpful, subscribe at Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave a quick rating. It makes a big difference. To learn more about how to run your teaching studio with less stress and more joy, visit fonz.com. I'm Eric Branner. Thanks for being here.